I'm Abigail, 32 female. I live alone in a city apartment that I worked incredibly hard to afford, managing complex tech projects for a living. For my entire life, I've been the reliable one, the planner, the fixer, the solid bedrock my family built their chaos upon. This is the story of how I finally let them see what happens when that bedrock decides to crumble on purpose. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The idea for the Greece trip started, as most of my family's grand ideas did, with a casual, entitled comment from my sister, Jessica. We were at my mother Alina's house for our obligatory Sunday dinner. I was clearing plates while everyone else sat around the table, scrolling on their phones. Jessica, a high-flying real estate agent who sold multi-million-dollar homes and never let anyone forget it, sighed dramatically. "I just saw the most divine pictures from Santorini," she announced to the room. "White buildings, blue domes, we should go, all of us, for Mom and Dad's anniversary." My mother, a retired school principal who ran her family with the same iron fist she'd used on unruly teenagers, lit up. "Oh, Jess, what a wonderful idea, a real family trip. We haven't done one of those in years." My brother, Mark, who had a fledgling tech startup that was perpetually on the verge of making it big, nodded eagerly. "Totally. I could use the getaway. We could network. You never know who you'll meet in Mykonos." I paused, a stack of plates in my hands. A trip to Greece? That sounds expensive. This was my role in the family. The pragmatist, the one who brought their high-flying ideas down to earth with boring things like budgets and logistics. It was a role I hated, but one they had all come to expect. Jessica waved a dismissive hand, her diamond rings catching the light. "Don't be such a downer, Abigail. We'll figure it out. You're good at that stuff, right? Finding deals, booking things. You can handle the planning." And just like that, I was assigned the job. It wasn't a request, it was a statement of fact. Abigail, the project manager, would manage the family's vacation project. Part of me, the part that still desperately craved their approval, felt a flicker of pride. They trusted me. They needed me. The other, more sensible part of me knew I was just being handed a mountain of unpaid, unappreciated work. Over the next few weeks, that's exactly what it became. I spent my evenings and weekends researching. I compared flight prices, scoured hotel reviews, and built a meticulous spreadsheet. The budget was astronomical, even with the most aggressive deal hunting. When I presented it to them, they all balked. "There's no way it costs that much," Mark said, looking at the spreadsheet on my laptop as if the numbers had personally offended him. "I found us business class seats for a transatlantic flight, villas with private pools, and a chartered boat tour," I explained patiently. "This is what luxury costs." "Well, we can't afford that," my mother declared, her tone making it clear that this was somehow my fault. "You need to find a way to make it cheaper, Abigail." Jessica chimed in. "My friend Tiffany went last year, and she said they got an amazing deal. You're probably not looking in the right places." I bit my tongue. Tiffany's husband was a surgeon. My brother was living off seed funding, my sister's income was commission-based and unpredictable, and my parents were on a fixed retirement income. I was the only one with a stable, high-paying job and significant savings. "Okay," I said, forcing a smile. "Let me see what I can do." I went back to the drawing board. I downgraded the flights from business to premium economy. I swapped the private villas for interconnected suites in a 5-star resort. I found a highly rated group boat tour instead of a private charter. I presented the new budget. It was still high, but more manageable. They were still hesitant. Then came the part I knew was coming. "You know, Abigail," my mother started, her voice soft and wheedling. "Your salary is so good now, and you don't have a mortgage or kids to worry about like your sister does. Maybe you could help out a little more with the cost, as your gift to us." Jessica and Mark nodded in unison, their eyes wide and hopeful. It was a classic family maneuver. Frame it as a gift, a loving gesture, so if I said no, I wasn't being financially responsible. I was being ungrateful and selfish. How much more? I asked, my stomach tightening. Well, Jessica said, pulling out her phone and doing some quick math. If you covered the hotels for everyone, the rest of us could probably handle our own flights and spending money. I did the math in my head. The hotels were the single biggest expense. It was nearly 20 thou. Sand dollars. I had that much in my travel savings fund, a fund I had been building for 5 years with the dream of taking a year off to travel the world solo. This trip would wipe it out completely. But looking at their expectant faces, I felt that familiar pressure. The desire to be the good daughter, the helpful sister. The one who made things happen. Maybe if I did this one huge thing, they would finally see me. They would finally appreciate me. Okay, I whispered. I'll cover the hotels. The mood shifted instantly. There were cheers, hugs, and declarations that I was the best sister ever. My mother kissed my cheek and said, I knew we could count on you, sweetie. For the next 2 months, I became a full-time travel agent. I booked everything. Every hotel, every ferry, every dinner reservation at a must-try restaurant. I coordinated everyone's schedules, collected their passport information, and sent out a detailed itinerary complete with packing lists and cultural tips. I paid the massive deposits on my credit card, watching my savings account drain with a painful lurch each time. The trip was for 2 weeks in late August for my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. It was meant to be the trip of a lifetime, a celebration of family, a moment of unity I had paid for with my own dreams. I told myself it would be worth it. The memories we'd make, the pictures we'd take against the Santorini sunset, surely those would be priceless. I created a shared digital folder with all the confirmations, booking numbers, and tickets. I triple-checked everything. The flights were booked under their individual names, paid for by them. But every hotel, from the luxury suite in Athens to the cliffside resort in Santorini, was under my name and paid in full from my account. I was the linchpin holding the entire, glittering, $20,000 dream together. I felt a mix of pride and sheer terror. All I wanted was for them to be happy, for us to feel like a real family. I had no idea how naive that was. I was just the architect of a beautiful stage, and I was about to find out I hadn't been cast in the play. As the departure date drew closer, a strange chill began to settle over my interactions with my family. It wasn't one big event, but a series of small, unsettling moments that felt like paper cuts. They were small enough to ignore individually, but together, they started to bleed. It began with the family group chat, the one I had created to coordinate trip details. It was called Grease Lightning, a cheesy name Mark had come up with. At first, it was buzzing with excitement. Jessica would post pictures of outfits she was buying, and my mom would share articles about ancient ruins. But then, I noticed the chat would go silent for long stretches. I'd post a question: does anyone have any dietary restrictions I should let the restaurants know about? And be met with hours of silence. Then, suddenly, a flurry of messages would appear between Jessica, Mark, and my mother about a completely unrelated topic, as if my question had never been asked. I brushed it off. They were busy. I was being too sensitive. Then came the incident with the packing. I called Jessica one afternoon, about 2 weeks before the trip. Hey, I was just looking at the ferry luggage restrictions, I started, and they're pretty strict. We should all probably stick to 1 carry-on and 1 checked bag. There was a pause on her end, and I heard her stifle a laugh. Oh, Abigail, don't worry about that. What do you mean? I don't want them to charge us extra fees at the port, I said, my project manager brain kicking into high gear. I mean, don't bother packing for Greece, she snickered, the sound sharp and condescending. I was confused. What? Why would you say that? The trip is in 2 weeks. Her voice turned syrupy sweet, the way it did when she was about to be particularly cruel. It's a family trip, silly, for Mom and Dad, a real family bonding experience. The emphasis she put on the word family felt like a slap. What was she implying? That I wasn't family? I am family, Jess, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. I planned the whole thing. Oh, we know, and we are so grateful, she said, her tone dripping with fake sincerity. You'll understand, just don't worry your pretty little head about packing. She hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling a cold dread creep up my spine. It was a bizarre and hurtful thing to say. A joke? It had to be a joke. A mean, typical Jessica joke. I tried to call her back, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted her. What did you mean by that? The little bubble with 3 dots appeared and then vanished. She never replied. That Sunday, at dinner, the atmosphere was even stranger. I brought up the packing comment, trying to laugh it off. Jess, you had me worried for a second there. For a minute, I thought you were TR. Ying to uninvite me from the trip I planned and paid for. Mark chuckled nervously, refusing to meet my eyes. My mother just smiled, a tight, knowing smirk that didn't reach her eyes. Don't be so dramatic, Abigail, she said calmly. You're taking things too personally. Jessica was just teasing you. She then turned to my dad. David, pass the potatoes. My dad, a man who had long ago mastered the art of strategic silence to keep the peace, did as he was told. He gave me a quick, apologetic glance, but said nothing. The conversation moved on, but I felt like a ghost at the table. They were talking about the trip, about things they wanted to do, but they weren't talking to me. They were talking around me. Mark, you'll have to take my picture for my Instagram at that one spot with the blue roof, Jessica said. The lighting will be perfect for my brand. Mom, I made a reservation at that seafood place you love in Athens, I interjected, trying to reclaim my place in the conversation. The one with the view of the Acropolis. Oh, that's nice, dear, my mother said, her attention already back on Jessica. Now, Jess, are you bringing your new Chanel espadrilles? They would be perfect for that. It was infuriating. It was like I had become invisible, my only purpose to be the silent financial backer and logistical robot for their perfect family vacation. The more I tried to engage, the more they deflected. They'd answer my direct questions with vague, one-word answers before eagerly turning to each other to discuss some private joke I wasn't privy to. The final, most cutting comment came from my mother the week before we were scheduled to leave. I was at her house, dropping off a set of customized luggage tags I'd ordered for everyone. It was a silly, sentimental gesture, but I thought it would be a nice touch. She took the one with her name on it and examined it. This is lovely, Abigail. You think of everything. I'm just so excited, I said, my voice genuine. I think this is really going to be a trip to remember. She patted my arm, her expression unreadable. It will be. It's an important time for the family. She looked at me then, her eyes holding a strange mix of pity and condescension. She let out a little sigh and gave me that same smirk from the dinner table. You'll understand one day. Understand what? I asked, my frustration mounting. Oh, you know, she said, waving a hand vaguely. Things, it's complicated. When you have your own family, a real family, you'll get it. My own family. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I wasn't married, I didn't have children. To her, that meant I wasn't a real family. I was the single, childless daughter, an accessory, an ATM, not part of the core unit. The implication was clear. The family that was going on this trip consisted of her, my dad, and her 2 children who had produced grandchildren and lived lives she understood and approved of. I was the other. I just stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. All the work, all the money, all my sacrificed dreams, it was all for people who didn't even see me as one of them. The warmth and excitement I'd been clinging to evaporated, replaced by an icy certainty that something was deeply wrong. I couldn't fight her, I couldn't argue. What would I even say? I am real family. It would only lead to more gaslighting, more accusations of being too sensitive. So I just nodded. I gave her a tight, brittle smile. Of course, I said, the words tasted like ash in my mouth. I'm sure I will. I walked out of her house that day feeling hollowed out. The cruel jokes, the silences, the condescending smirks, they weren't random acts of thoughtlessness. They were pieces of a puzzle, and I was starting to realize I wasn't going to like the final picture. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mother's words, "You'll understand one day," echoed in my mind, layered with Jessica's snide, "Don't bother packing." It felt like a riddle I was supposed to be too stupid to solve. I tossed and turned, the $20,000 hole in my savings account feeling more like a gaping wound. I had been treated like an outsider for years, but this felt different. This felt coordinated, deliberate. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went into my living room. My laptop was open on the coffee table, still displaying the master itinerary for the Greece trip. I stared at the neat columns and hyperlinks, a monument to my own foolishness. On a whim, I opened my web browser. My brother, Mark, had used my laptop a few days earlier to quickly check something while he was visiting. He was careless with technology, always leaving a trail of open tabs and forgotten logins. His social media page was still logged in. Normally, I would have logged him out immediately. It felt like a violation of privacy. But that night, fueled by a potent cocktail of insomnia, hurt, and suspicion, I hesitated. A little voice in my head, the one I usually ignored, whispered, "Look." I clicked on his messages. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt guilty, like I was the one doing something wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. And there it was, pinned to the top of his message list, a group chat I'd never seen before. The title was simple: Family Trip. The members were Alina, Jessica, and Mark. I wasn't in it. My breath hitched. My hands started to shake as I clicked on it. The chat history went back for months, to the day after I had agreed to pay for the hotels. It was a running commentary on the trip, on the planning, on me. The first message I saw was from Jessica. "Can you believe she actually fell for it? Wiped out her entire savings for us. LOL." Mark had replied with a string of laughing emojis. The "it's a gift for mom and dad" line works every time. She's so desperate for approval it's almost sad. My mother, Alina, had written, Now, be nice. Abigail is very useful. We couldn't do this without her generosity. Just make sure she doesn't suspect anything until it's too late. We need those hotel rooms confirmed." I felt the air leave my lungs. My vision swam. I had to grip the edge of the coffee table to steady myself. I scrolled up, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. I read through months of their secret conversations, each message a fresh stab of betrayal. They had planned it from the very beginning. The idea for the trip wasn't a spontaneous thought from Jessica. It was a calculated scheme to get a free luxury vacation. They had discussed how to manipulate me into paying for it, dissecting my weaknesses with chilling accuracy. They called me the bank, the planner, and, in one particularly cruel message from Jessica, the spinster stepmule. They talked about their real plans for the trip. They had booked a different set of flights, on a different day. They were leaving a day earlier than the itinerary I had painstakingly created. Their plan was to let me drive them to the airport on the scheduled departure date, thinking I was going with them. They were going to let me check in, only to be told my ticket didn't exist. Jessica had outlined the scene in a message. Imagine her face when the airline agent tells her there's no ticket for her. We'll just act all shocked and confused. "Oh, Abigail, there must be some mistake. We'll call you from Greece and figure it out." And then we block her number. My mother had added, "We just have to be very sympathetic. Tell her we're so sorry and that it's a terrible mix-up. We'll promise to pay her back as soon as we can, of course. We just need to manage her reaction at the airport so she doesn't make a scene." The most sickening part was the discussion about what they were going to tell me after the trip. Their story was that they would claim the hotels were non-refundable and they felt too bad for me to cancel, so they went anyway to not let my money go to waste. They would promise to pay me back in installments, a promise they all openly joked they had no intention of keeping. Mark had written, "She'll get over it. She always does. A few months of the silent treatment and she'll be begging us for forgiveness for ruining the family dynamic." But there was one more piece to their puzzle. A piece that explained my mother's cryptic words, "You'll understand when you have a real family." Jessica had posted a link to a rental villa in Santorini. It was stunning, far more luxurious than the hotel suites I had booked. Just put the deposit down on this place for the second week. It's perfect for the four of us. Four of them. I scrolled back, confused, and then I saw it. A message from Mark to Jessica. Did you tell Brandon yet? Is he excited? Brandon, Jessica's ex-boyfriend from college. A man she'd reconnected with a few months ago, a fact she had conveniently omitted from any conversation with me. Jessica's reply, he's so excited. He's meeting us in Athens. Mom is thrilled. She said it's about time I was with a real man and not just focused on my career. She thinks this trip will be the perfect place for him to propose. My mother had replied with a series of heart emojis. I have a good feeling about this. A 40th anniversary and an engagement all on one trip. It's a real family celebration. There it was, the full, disgusting picture. I wasn't just being excluded, I was being replaced. They weren't just taking my money, they were using it to fund a romantic getaway for my sister and her secret boyfriend, a man they had already welcomed into the real family, while I was being systematically pushed out. My role was to provide the funds and the logistics for their perfect life, and then disappear. I sat back on my couch, the laptop screen casting a pale, sickly light on my face. I felt nothing and everything all at once. The shock was so profound it was like a physical blow, leaving me numb and breathless. The person I was 10 minutes ago, the dutiful daughter, the loving sister, the fool who thought this trip would bring her family closer, was gone. She had been murdered by a secret group chat. In her place, something new was stirring, a cold, hard clarity. The hurt was still there, a deep, cavernous ache in my chest, but underneath it, a different feeling was beginning to smolder. It wasn't sadness. It was rage, a pure, quiet, and absolutely focused rage. They thought I was a mule, a bank, a stepping stone. They thought I was a problem to be managed. They had no idea who I really was. They had no idea what a project manager does when a project has gone catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. You fix it, or in this case, you burn it to the ground. For the rest of the night, I didn't move from my couch. I just sat there, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating my face, rereading the messages in the family trip group chat over and over again. Each pass brought a new layer of pain, but also a new layer of cold, hard resolve. I had to move past the emotional devastation and start thinking like the professional they took me for, but only in the most superficial sense. They saw me as a planner, an organizer. They were about to find out what happened when my primary project became my own vindication. The first step was to gather intelligence. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception, not just the emotional betrayal, but the logistical details of their real plan. I became a detective in my own life, sifting through the evidence of their lies. I took screenshots of the entire chat history, from the first gleeful message about my gullibility to the latest one from Jessica about buying a new white dress for the big question. I saved them to a secure cloud folder, a silent testament to their treachery. Their plan was sloppy in its arrogance. They assumed I was too naive and too emotionally invested to ever suspect a thing. Mark, in his carelessness, hadn't just left his social media open. His email was logged in on my browser too. A few clicks and I was in. It felt wrong, but I was long past the point of caring about their privacy. They had forfeited that right when they decided to treat me like a disposable wallet. In his sent folder, I found it, the flight confirmation for the four of them, my mother, father, Jessica, and Mark. As they discussed, it was for a day earlier than our official departure. They were scheduled to fly out next Tuesday, while I was under the impression we were all leaving on Wednesday. I noted the flight number and the airline. Then I found the confirmation for Jessica's secret boyfriend, Brandon. He was arriving in Athens on the same day, on a separate flight from a different city. They had everything timed perfectly. The next piece of the puzzle was their accommodation. They had openly mocked the 5-star hotel suites I had booked and paid for. In the chat, Jessica had mentioned a private villa for the second week in Santorini. A quick search in Mark's email brought up a booking confirmation from a luxury rental site. The villa was booked under Jessica's name. The payment history showed a small deposit had been paid on her credit card. The remaining balance, a staggering €10,000, was due upon arrival. They were clearly planning to use the savings from my free hotels to pay for their upgrade. But what about the first week in Athens? They couldn't check into the hotel I booked a day early. The reservation was in my name for a Wednesday arrival. A bit more digging in the chat history revealed their simple, brazen solution. Mark had written, "The Athens hotel is Abigail's problem. We'll just tell her we decided to fly in early to surprise Mom and Dad. She'll have to call and change the reservation. She's so good at that stuff, she'll probably get it done in 5 minutes and even get us a free room upgrade for our trouble." They were going to create a logistical problem and then sit back and watch me, the ever-reliable fixer, solve it for them, never suspecting the problem was part of their own premeditated plan. The audacity was breathtaking. They weren't just deceiving me, they were actively planning to use my competence against me as part of the deception itself. I spent hours mapping out their entire secret itinerary. Their real flights, their shadow accommodations, their planned rendezvous with Brandon. I cross-referenced everything with the bookings I had made. The hotels in Athens and Santorini, the island hopper ferry tickets, the curated dinner reservations, the private tour of the Acropolis, all booked and paid for by me, all in my name. As I worked, the raw emotion began to subside, replaced by an almost zen-like focus. This was no longer a family drama. It was a project that had been sabotaged by untrustworthy stakeholders. My objective had shifted from delivering a successful family vacation to executing a flawless exit strategy and risk mitigation plan. The risk? My famil. Wise complete and utter destruction of my finances and emotional well-being. Mitigation? Ensuring they received exactly what they had planned for me. Nothing. I logged out of Mark's accounts and cleared my browser history. They would never know I'd seen it. As far as they were concerned, I was still good old Abigail, the naive pushover, eagerly packing my bags for a trip I was never meant to be on. The next few days were the strangest performance of my life. I had to pretend that everything was normal. I answered their calls and texts with a cheerful, oblivious tone. "Just confirming you're all set for Wednesday morning," I texted in our official group chat. "I'll be there to pick everyone up at 7 a.m. My mother replied with a simple, "Sounds good, dear." I could almost hear the smirk in her voice. In their secret chat, I knew they were laughing, picturing me driving to their houses on Wednesday morning to find them already gone. Jessica called me to ask for the address of the hotel in Athens. "I just want to plug it into my maps ahead of time," she said, her voice bright and breezy. "Of course," I said, my own voice a perfect imitation of helpfulness. "I'll send you the link. It's a beautiful place. I got a suites with a balcony view of the city." "Oh, that's nice," she said, a flicker of something guilt, no, more likely amusement in her voice. "You really are the best, Abby." "I try," I said, and the call ended. Each interaction was a fresh twist of the knife, but it also hardened my resolve. They were so confident in their deceit, so sure of my ignorance. They saw me as a simple, two-dimensional character in their grand drama. They had no idea I was now the director, and the final act was going to be a complete rewrite. I looked at the final piece of evidence I had collected, a screenshot of a message from my mother in the secret chat. It was from the day I had agreed to pay for everything. She agreed. I knew she would. She has this deep-seated need to be the hero, to fix everything for us. As long as we keep letting her think she's saving us, we can get anything we want. Reading it again, I didn't feel pain. I felt a profound, liberating clarity. She was right. I did have a need to be the hero. They had used that need to exploit me, but they never stopped to consider what happens when the hero realizes she's been fighting for the villains all along. She stops fighting for them, and she starts fighting for herself. The plan for my revenge wasn't born in a flash of fiery inspiration. It was built quietly, methodically, over the course of one long, sleepless night, with the same precision I used to manage my multi-million-dollar projects at work. It was a simple plan, elegant in its brutality. I wasn't going to scream or cry or confront them. Confrontation was what they expected. It would give them the opportunity to twist my words, to gaslight me, to play the victim. No, my revenge would be silent, digital, and irreversible. The linchpin of their entire scheme was my money and my name. Every significant booking for their dream vacation was tied to me. They were counting on my reservations being there when they arrived. They had built their grand deception on a foundation I had laid, and I was about to pull it all out from under them. It was Monday night, the night before their secret, early departure. I knew they would be packing their bags, giddy with excitement, laughing about the fool of a sister they were leaving behind. The thought sent a jolt of ice through my veins. I opened my laptop, my movements calm and deliberate. I went to my email and opened the folder I had labeled Greece Trip. It was filled with dozens of confirmation messages. I opened the first one, the King George Hotel, Athens, a 5-night booking for 2 luxury suites, paid in full. Total cost, $8,000. The reservation was under my name, Abigail Peterson. I found the Manage My Booking link. I clicked it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I entered the confirmation number and my last name. The reservation details appeared on the screen, and right next to them, a beautiful, glorious button, Cancel Reservation. I took a deep breath. This was the point of no return. For a fleeting second, a lifetime of ingrained conditioning, to be the peacemaker, the good daughter, washed over me. A voice whispered, "Are you sure? This will destroy them. This will destroy your family." Then I pictured their messages. The spinster stepmule, she's so desperate for approval. The image of Jessica and her secret boyfriend laughing in a villa paid for with my dreams flashed in my mind. My hesitation vanished. I clicked the button. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this booking? Please review the cancellation policy." I had specifically booked hotels with a 24-hour free cancellation policy. It was a habit from my job, always build in flexibility, always have an exit strategy. It was a detail they had never bothered to ask about. They just saw the 5-star rating and the pretty pictures. I saw the fine print, and the fine print was about to save me. I clicked Confirm Cancellation. A moment later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject: Your booking at the King George Hotel has been canceled. I opened it and saw the confirmation. The email also stated that a full refund of $8,000 would be processed back to my original method of payment within 5 to 7 business days. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face for the first time in days. It felt like breathing again after being held underwater. One down. Next was the Canave's Oya Suites in Santorini. This was the crown jewel, the place they were most excited about. Cliffside suites with private infinity pools overlooking the caldera, paid in full. Total cost, $12,000. The reservation was in my name. I repeated the process. Login, manage booking, cancel. The cancellation policy was a bit stricter, 48 hours, but I was still well within the window. Click Confirm. Another email arrived. Subject: Your Santorini booking has been canceled. A refund of $12,000 was on its way. The feeling was intoxicating. It wasn't just about the money. It was about taking back control. With every click, I was dismantling the cage they had built for me, a cage gilded with their fake gratitude and my own misplaced hope. I went down the list, one by one. The ferry tickets from Athens to Santorini. They weren't expensive, but without them, they were stuck. Cancelled, full refund. The private wine tasting tour I had booked as a special anniversary gift for my parents. Cancelled, full refund. The reservation at the exclusive seaside restaurant in Mykonos, a place that required a credit card hold and had a month-long waiting list. Cancelled. Each cancellation confirmation email that landed in my inbox was a small victory, a digital receipt for my newfound freedom. I saved each one to a new folder on my desktop. I titled it, Refunds. By the time I was done, it was nearly 4 a.m. Every single part of the trip that I had arranged and paid for had been erased. All that was left were their flights. They would be able to fly to Greece, but when they arrived, they would find nothing waiting for them. No hotel rooms, no transportation, no plans, just the stark reality of their own arrogance. My final act was to deal with my phone. I knew that once they landed and the chaos began, my phone would be their first target. They would call, text, demand, plead, and threaten. I had no interest in being a party to their panic. I went into my phone settings and blocked their numbers. My mother, Alina, my sister, Jessica, my brother, Mark. One by one, their names were added to the block list. Then, for good measure, I blocked my dad. I felt a pang of guilt about that one. He was a passive participant, a man too weak to stand up to his wife and children. But his silence was complicity, and I needed a clean break. I set an auto-reply on my email account. Thank you for your message. I am currently on an extended vacation and will have limited access to email. I will respond upon my return. Then I did one last thing. I went to the airline's website, the one I had originally researched for our family trip. I looked up last-minute flights to Greece, for one person. There was a seat available on a flight leaving Wednesday morning, the day I was supposed to leave. It was expensive, but I now had a $20,000 refund pending. I entered my own name, my own passport details, and my own credit card number. I booked a first-class ticket to Athens. Then I booked a small, charming boutique hotel in a part of the city they would never think to look, all for myself. As the sun began to rise, I looked around my apartment. A few hours ago, it had felt like a prison of my own making. Now, it felt like a launch pad. I had a flight to catch. I had my own trip to take. I finally went to my bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. Jessica's words came back to me, no longer a cruel taunt, but a delicious irony. Don't bother packing for Greece, she had snickered. Okay, I whispered to the empty room, a wide, triumphant grin on my face. I won't. I wasn't packing for their Greece, I was packing for mine. Tuesday was a blur of blissful, detached peace. While my family was checking in for their flight, blissfully unaware of the chaos that awaited them, I was at a spa. I got a massage, a facial, and spent an hour in a steam room, letting the heat melt away the last vestiges of stress and familial obligation. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for anyone's happiness but my own. It was a strange and wonderful feeling. I went home, ordered my favorite takeout, and watched a movie. My phone, blessedly silent, sat on the coffee table like a dormant beast. The real show began on Wednesday morning. My own flight was sent until 11 a.m., but I woke up early around 6:30 a.m. I made a cup of coffee and sat on my balcony, watching the city wake up. I knew that across the Atlantic, my family's plane had landed in Athens. I pictured them walking through the arrivals hall, tired from the overnight flight but excited, heading for the taxi stand to go to a hotel that no longer had a room for them. The first tremor arrived at 7:01 a.m. It wasn't a call or a text because they were all blocked. It was an email. A new email from an address I didn't recognize. But the subject line was unmistakable. Urgent call ME now JESSICA. She must have used the airport Wi-Fi to create a new email account. The desperation was palpable even in the subject line. I took a sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. I didn't open it. A minute later, another email. This one from Mark, also from a new, hastily created address. Subject, Abigail, what the hell did you do? The hotel has no reservation for us. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. It was working. They were in Athens, stranded and confused. I could almost hear the panic in their voices. But the main event, the one I had been waiting for, was yet to come. Part of my revenge was not just about the hotels in Greece, but about the performance they had planned for me at our local airport. They had intended to humiliate me, to watch me get turned away at the check-in counter. I knew they would still be expecting me to show up at their houses at 7 a.m., ready to drive them to the airport for a flight I wasn't booked on. My brother, Leo, oh, I'm sorry, my brother, Mark, was the designated point person for this little piece of theater. At precisely 7:00 a.m. my time, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. It was my dad. They must have realized their own numbers were blocked and had him try. The text was short and frantic. "Abigail, it's Dad. Where are you? Mark is waiting. You need to pick him up for the airport." I let the message sit for a few minutes while I finished my coffee. Then, I unblocked only Mark's number. I was curious to see what he would say when he thought he could finally reach me. I typed out a simple, innocent reply to my dad. "Sorry, running a few minutes late. I'll text Mark now." I then switched over to my message thread with Mark. A flood of angry, previously unsent messages instantly appeared. "Where are you? Abigail, pick up your phone. We're going to be late." I waited a beat, then typed my reply. "So sorry, on my way now, see you in 20. His reply was instant. "Hurry up, and don't forget your passport." The last part was dripping with condescending, secret glee. I could picture him sending it with a smirk on his face, thinking he was so clever. I didn't reply, I just let him wait. I pictured him standing by his front door, his luggage next to him, checking his watch every 30 seconds, his annoyance growing. 20 minutes passed, then 30. At 7:35 a.m., his text started again. "Okay, this isn't funny. Where are you? I'm calling in Uber. You better have a good excuse. You are ruining this whole day." This was the moment, the culmination of their little airport subplot. I crafted my response carefully. I needed it to be perfect, simple, direct, and devastating. I smiled and replied, "Book it yourself." I immediately blocked his number again, along with my dad's. I didn't want to see the fallout. I didn't need to. I could imagine the frantic calls he would make to my sister and mother, who were already embroiled in their own hotel-less nightmare in Athens. The beautiful, intricate web of their deception was collapsing in on itself from 2 different continents. An hour later, as I was packing my last few things into my carry-on, a new wave of emails started. They had clearly regrouped and were trying a different tactic. This time, the email came from my mother's new account. Subject: "You have made a terrible mistake, Abigail." The tone had shifted from panic to fury. She accused me of being irresponsible, of making some catastrophic error with the bookings. She demanded I get on the phone with the hotels immediately and fix my mess. "Your father is exhausted, and I will not have him standing on a street corner in a foreign country because of your incompetence," she wrote. "You have 5 minutes to call Jessica and sort this out, or there will be serious consequences." Incompetence. The word was so laughable I almost choked. My incompetence wasn't the problem. My competence was. I had competently uncovered their scheme, and I was now competently executing my response. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded her the cancellation confirmation emails, all of them. The hotels, the ferries, the tour. I sent them without a subject line or a single word in the body of the email. Just the cold, hard digital proof of what I had done. The evidence that this was no mistake. This was a choice. The final email I received before leaving Faux. The airport was from Jessica. The fury was gone, replaced by a tone that was somehow even more repulsive, feigned concern. Subject: "Are you okay?" "Abby," it read, "we just saw the cancellation emails. We don't understand what's happening. Did you get into some kind of trouble? Is this about money? We're really worried about you. Please just tell us what's wrong. We're family. We can fix this together." We can fix this together. The hypocrisy was so profound it was almost poetic. They had never wanted to fix anything with me, only to fix things by using me. I thought about crafting a long, angry reply, laying out every detail of their betrayal. But what was the point? They knew what they did. They weren't sorry for doing it, they were just sorry they got caught. So I typed back a single, solitary sentence, a quote from their own secret chat, a line my mother had used to describe me. I'm just being useful. I hit send. Then I logged out of my email, turned off my phone, and put it in my bag. I called a car to take me to the airport, my own airport, for my own flight. Their panic was no longer my problem. It was just a distant noise from a life I had already left behind. Stepping off the plane in Athens felt like stepping into a different life. The air was warm and smelled of salt and jasmine. The sky was a shade of blue so intense it almost hurt to look at. There was no one waiting for me, no family drama to manage, no cloud of resentment hanging over my head. There was just me, a suitcase, and the promise of a city humming with thousands of years of history. I spent the first few days exploring on my own terms. I wandered through the Plaka district, buying a small, silver olive branch necklace from a street vendor. I hiked up to the Acropolis at dawn, watching the sun rise and cast a golden glow over the Parthenon. I sat at cafes for hours, drinking strong coffee, reading a book, and watching the world go by. I did everything I had planned to do on the family trip, but this time it was peaceful, joyful, and entirely for me. My phone remained off for the first 72 hours. I needed to decompress to fully sever the cord. When I finally turned it on, I was in my beautiful boutique hotel room, looking out over a quiet, tree-lined square. I connected to the Wi-Fi, and the notifications came flooding in. Dozens of emails, hundreds of missed calls and texts from unknown numbers. It was a digital avalanche of their desperation. I read a few of the emails out of a morbid curiosity. They had cycled through every possible tactic. First came the rage and threats from my mother, Eleanor. She promised I was out of the family, disowned, and that I would live to regret this betrayal. She detailed how they had to spend a fortune on a last-minute, terrible hotel, how their anniversary was ruined, how it was all my fault. Then came the guilt-tripping from Jessica. She wrote about how Dad was so disappointed and how could I be so cruel. She mentioned Brandon, framing it as if I had ruined her one chance at happiness. He flew all this way to be with our family, and you destroyed it, Abigail. I hope you're happy. Finally, there was the bargaining from Mark. He sent spreadsheets, actual spreadsheets, outlining a repayment plan for the money I had cost them by booking last-minute accommodation. He promised that if I just reinstated the Santorini hotel, all would be forgiven. He even offered to let me join them for the second week if I apologized. It was all so predictable, so transparently self-serving. Not a single message contained a genuine apology. There was no acknowledgement of their plan, no remorse for their cruelty. Their only regret was that their scheme had failed. I composed a single, final email. I sent it as a group reply to all their new addresses. To my former family, I wrote, I am not in trouble. I did not make a mistake. What I did was a direct response to discovering your calculated, malicious plan to exploit me financially and humiliate me emotionally. I know about the secret group chat. I know about the plan to abandon me at the airport. I know you were leaving a day early. I know about Brandon. I have screenshots of everything. The money you spent on last-minute hotels is not my problem. The ruined anniversary is not my problem. The disappointment you feel is not my problem. These are the consequences of your own actions. You built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and I simply refuse to hold it up for you any longer. Do not contact me again. I am not your bank, I am not your planner, and I am no longer your mule. I am free. This is the last you will ever hear from me. Abigail. I hit send and then, one by one, I deleted every email and blocked every new address they had created. I scrubbed them from my digital life as thoroughly as I had scrubbed them from my real one. A few days later, I took a ferry to a small, quiet island, one not on our original itinerary. It was peaceful and rugged, with deserted beaches and tiny, family-run tavernas. I spent my days swimming in the clear turquoise water and my evenings eating fresh fish and drinking local wine. One morning, I woke up early and hiked to the highest point on the island, a small, whitewashed chapel overlooking the sea. I sat on a stone wall and watched the sun rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange and gold. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. This was my Santorini sunset, the one I had paid for, and it was better than anything I could have shared with them. When I returned home 2 weeks later, I was a different person. The constant weight of my family's expectations had been lifted, and I felt lighter, stronger. I changed the locks on my apartment door and instructed my doorman not to allow any of them up. The apologies, when they finally came, were just as hollow as I expected. A letter from my mother slipped under my door, full of excuses but no real ownership. A tearful voicemail from my dad, saying he was sorry for how things turned out. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry for the new reality they now faced, a reality where their fixer was gone. I never responded. Their apology was not accepted because it was never truly offered.